The language that is used in this text of God shattering his enemies and consuming them like chaff is intended to point generations to come to the fact that God's deliverance wasn't even a challenge. Friends, if you were to ask the people in this moment in Exodus 13 and 14 and 12, right here in this moment, if you were to ask them the question of how decisive was God's victory, they would say, Yahweh may have challengers, but he never has a challenge. Now, again, a big question for us today is to ask, what does that mean for us today? What does it mean for us today who are followers of Jesus? What are the road signs in this story that point us to our day and age? Well, the reality is that for those of us who are followers of Jesus, we in our desperate, sinful state, we needed a Savior. And the decisive moment in the victory that Jesus would give for us was not only when he died on the cross, but in fact, the most decisive moment was when he rose from the grave. You see, Jesus promised that his sacrificial death would ultimately be what would be needed for us to be saved. He said in Mark 10:45, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many." However, unless Jesus rose from the grave, all of his promises would have been null and void. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 says, if Christ is not raised, we above all men should be pitied. You see, the resurrection of Jesus was the Red Sea moment that would finally proclaim deliverance over sin for those who put their faith in him. You see, on Friday, when they took Jesus' body down from the cross and they placed it in the tomb, no one was certain what would happen. On Saturday morning, all of heaven looked on to see what would happen, but Jesus remained dead. On Saturday night, nothing had changed, and it seemed as though all hope was held captive. But early on Sunday morning, when God rolled the stone away and Jesus walked out alive forevermore, we see that God had parted the waters of death and Jesus had come out safely on the other side. And it was a clear and decisive victory that Jesus had defeated death, hell, and the grave. In the same way that God brought his people across the Red Sea, he brought his son out of the tomb.